Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. We're glad you're here. Subscribe to this channel. We appreciate that. And if you like this video, hit that like button.
Yep, and check out the podcast below in the description. Subscribe to it and share it with your amigos.
For all the time that Kyle Shanahan's been the coach of the Niners, he hasn't been in this spot yet, right? A road playoff game.
I've been thinking a lot about this, and the best part about this weekend, and I've said it forever when I used to talk a lot of shit about James Harden, is just no one cares what you do in the NBA, like in October. No one cares, like James Harden scored all those points when Daryl Morey would like try to give him a circle jerk and act like he was Michael Jordan in February. Just nobody does. Just like baseball, like you can hit a lot of home runs. It used to matter more. Like you get a lot of credit for big games. And Kyle got a lot of credit last week. That game really mattered because that was a playoff game to the Niners. But when you go to your Wikipedia, which whenever I'm looking up a guy's record, I just type in Mike Vrabel, and it'll bring up he is 40-20 as a head coach, and he's 2-2 in the playoffs. You go, well, he's been in the playoffs several times. He's won a couple playoff games. You know, Kyle's record right now in the playoffs for the Niners is 2-1, right? I mean, he's won the 2 home playoff games and lost the Super Bowl. Well, you win this game, all of a sudden you have 3 playoff wins. Now, you've had some ugly seasons, but you got 3 playoff wins. And the one thing where Jim Harbaugh got a lot of credit, I think you could argue, I don't give a shit who you're playing. And obviously the Niners are playing a good opponent. Like, you can't really, I mean, there are probably better opponents in the playoffs. Like, there's a difference between playing like the Chiefs and, you know, the Raiders or something in the playoffs. But if you're going on the road, I'd argue that's worth even more than a win. So when you get road playoff victories, remember Mike Vrabel did it several years ago when he beat the Patriots and then he beat the number 1 seed, the Ravens. Remember how much people were like, God damn, this big guy's good. You go on the road and win a game, I would say it would validate their season. You know, like last week made the season all worth it, like the roller coaster that was. This would go, that was a successful last season. You got it in the playoffs, you won a road playoff game, and now you're going to play the back-to-back MVP and just, you know, throw the kitchen sink at them.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, sorry.
So it's just, this is a game where this is the reason you pay your coach $10 million, and you're lucky enough that he's not CEO head coach. He's the play caller. He dictates the term for half the game, and he's, you know, really on a team with a bunch of stars. I would still say that Kyle Shanahan is the face of the franchise.
Yeah, I would agree with that because the stars on offense, partly, you know, part of why we appreciate Debo. When you talk about Debo, it's how tough he is, it's how athletic he is, but it's also the way Kyle uses him is a big part of that conversation. Kittle, the same thing. Bosa's different in that way.
Bosa's a star, but he'd be good anywhere.
Yeah, and all these guys are stars, right? These are just star players. But every great team needs star players. I think what's interesting with Kyle is there's always this ongoing debate with him, right? And it usually comes down to winning percentage. If you're anti-Kyle, you talk about his win-loss record. If you're pro-Kyle, you talk about his offense, and you talk about he went to the Super Bowl. And he doesn't have another season that if you are making a pro-Kyle Shanahan argument that you point to. You could point to, well, look how competitive he was with Nick Mullins. But that's not getting anybody extensions, right?
He's actually closer to getting back to 500 than I even thought. He's 39-42.
Okay. So he could get there by, you know, the Super Bowl. Right? 40,
well,
41?
Regular season. Overall career is 41-43.
Okay. So he could get there by the Super Bowl. But to me, if you beat the Cowboys this week, this season is not a season that gets used against you at this point, like right here, right now. This is not a season that you would use against Kyle. Is it a season you would use for him? Yeah. I mean, if you had to pick one, it's a playoff year. Playoff years are in the positive column. He wins a playoff game in Dallas and then gets the opportunity to go to Green Bay and play the Packers, then this is part of a strong argument to make for Kyle Shanahan, the head coach. Time will tell what Kyle Shanahan, the talent evaluator and the quarterback developer, that story's yet to be written. But you go on the road and beat the Cowboys after you just played the game you played against the Rams, then this is strongly in the look at how good Kyle Shanahan is category.
Well, part of this sport and being a fan of this sport, talking about this sport, is unlike the other sports. Like you and I hosted a radio show and we talked about baseball. Like you can fake overreact to every games, and they do it in New York. It's really hard because most humans don't. You just watch a baseball game, you go to bed, and you get up, and you go to work, and then you watch the next baseball game. It just happens one after another. Not most games don't really matter. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they all individually matter. You got to rank up enough wins to get in the playoffs, but no individual game makes or breaks you. In basketball, because you play 6 days a week. In basketball, you play 3 or 4 days a week. In football, you only play once a week. And we've all seen like the statistical breakdowns, right? Like one NFL game is the equivalent of 15 baseball games and 7 basketball games, right? It is legitimately more important just based on the number of games. So you're just naturally going to react on what happens, right? Good or bad to a given game. Throughout, now we have 17 of them. But when this year, like Kyle was taking a lot of heat. People were just throwing it out there, and he was never going to. But like, he should be on the hot seat or whatever. People could have that argument, right? You could legitimately have that argument, even if we disagreed. You rack up enough playoff victories, you're just arguing that he had a bad game from moving forward.
Right.
That was a shitty play call. He should have done this on 4th and 2 instead of that. The guys weren't ready. They came out flat. Whatever. That happens to Belichick. That happens to Andy Reid. But like, no Titans fan, and don't get it twisted. They got a little hive on Twitter.
I remember what was the take a few years ago? Mariota's basically Alex Smith.
They didn't like that.
They didn't like that. Yeah.
Wouldn't he have died to be Alex Smith? Looking back.
Yes.
So I'm gonna take a W on that one.
Take a W on that one.
That when you argue over all the high-end coaches, you're just getting mad at them individually, which is normal. Like they self-critique themselves. That's the sport. But you're not calling for Sean Payton's job. You're not calling for Andy Reid's job. Hell, even Sean McVay, you're furious at him last week. You're fired up. He's your coach. Well, this is what Kyle needs to do. Like, you get a road playoff game and you just make the playoffs. So it's like, well, 2 of his 5 years, he's won playoff games. Not just made the playoffs, won playoff games. And then you win a road playoff game as an underdog. Because the one thing, you look back at a Super Bowl year, he was favored in both those games, and he was at home. Like, he was he was dictating the terms. This is, like, he's the underdog. Rightfully so. You go in and beat McCarthy, and listen, I would say most people, it feels like, make fun of Mike. His resume is pretty good. Now, you can say it's all Aaron, but then you'd have to say the same thing for LaFleur that I think we all like. Like, McCarthy has won some games that have mattered over his career. Like, he's not, and I'm guilty of this, I think we act like he's way worse than if you just go to his Wikipedia page, it would say he is, right? He has coached in a lot of big games on the sideline. Like, you are not coaching against Jim Tomsula this weekend.
That's true. But this is also different than some of the games that Kyle Shanahan has lost in the playoffs before, right? The comeback to the Patriots, in the end, you got beat by Belichick's Patriots. The loss in the Super Bowl, in the end, you got beat by Mahomes and Andy Reid. I don't think there's any shame in losing this game necessarily. I'm with you. Like, I am not here to denigrate the Dallas Cowboys. They're clearly one of the better teams in the NFL.
I think people respect their roster. I think they don't respect the head coach. That's the thing. Right?
I would be in that category. I said for a year and a half, I've had to stop saying it, that I thought they've got the wrong head coach. But that still might prove to be true. But I've had to shut up on that for half of the season because I felt that way after last year. I felt that way even early this year.
You go 12-5, you go 12-5. Right?
Yeah, I'm not. Again, they're a good team. He's clearly not a joke. But if you were to lose, how would that one wear over time? Is this team about to go to the NFC Championship game? Are they going to win a championship in the next 4 years? Or are we going to look back in 4 years and 3 years? I mean, I don't think if they're failing, if they're not going deep into the playoffs, he's not there 3 years from now. So I don't know exactly what this Cowboy team is. If I had to bet, does this Cowboy team win a Super Bowl? I would bet no.
I agree.
So, who you lose to is part of the whole big picture. But ultimately, like you said, it is black and white numbers. Do you win playoff games? If you win playoff games, you get contract extensions, you get power, you become a long tenured coach, and you have a successful head coaching career. So you get into the dance, and the margins are thin. Like, if we went through every year Belichick in the postseason, they would have some games that they won by the skin of their teeth, right? But they've played in 10 Super Bowls with Tom, right? 10?
9.
9? 9.
9. They lost 3 of them.
Okay.
He's won 6.
So you just, if you're in the fight,
but
right,
I think they lost in like 4 other AFC Championship games. You know, I mean, they were. It's remarkable when you look at what they did.
It wasn't just because you always told me he was good. It's why I just having watched Andy Reid in Philly, it was like, who goes to this? Who is in the fight this much? You just got to be in the fight a lot. Just in the fight, man in the arena. Tom Brady, and I think if you're in the fight a lot, and that's what I would say for Mike. Right, Mike's been in the fight a lot. If you're in the fight a lot, you are gonna naturally catch some breaks, and you're gonna have some things go against you. But if you're just in it, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to put together these are where careers are made. Ask Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's just been in the fight every year, every single year. And does he have 3 Super Bowls? No. But he's viewed as one of the elite coaches of his era. Same for Sean Payton.
Yeah. Which is why I think Mike Vrabel's doing a kind of slowly building a pretty impressive, like, damn, this guy's not messing around. You can nitpick his team all you want, and he's got Ryan Tannehill. This guy's number 1 seed, playoff victories, playoffs every year, double-digit wins. It's pretty nuts what Vrabel's doing, right? Yeah, I say it all the time.
Tom's got 7. Tom lost to the Eagles.
No, Tom has 7 Super Bowls, but with Bill. Did you mean Tom?
Sorry, I was just talking about them together. You're right. Bill has 6 with Tom. Tom has 7 separately. Tom's played in 10. Sorry, that was the number I was thinking of.
Gotcha.
Keep going.
So it's just like, I mean, this is a big weekend for Kyle. And you're right. He loses. It's not the only way it would suck if they get their ass kicked. That would be pretty bad because they shouldn't. They're to me, they're equals. You know, and equals in a playoff game comes down to schematics, comes down to turnovers, comes down to shit we'll just talk about coming up. I mean, it comes down to the little details. This is playoff football. Right, it's you watch that national championship game was excellent because you thought like, God damn, these guys belong on the same field with each other. There's not another team in the country that belongs on the field with these two guys, and it was 19-18 in the fourth quarter, and then he threw a pick, it just kind of snowballed on him. But it was the level of margin for errors in big games because in college football, it shows you like right now. It's just when the 2 SEC teams play, that's the best game. But in the NFL, like once the playoffs start, and there'll be a couple games this week, I'm sure, that are won by 18 points or whatever. But there'll be a couple that you're coming in the fourth quarter, like especially if you're betting on it, you're like, oh my God, this thing is tight.
Yeah.
And that's the way the NFL is in general. Like if you're just sitting on your couch watching Sunday football, it feels a little bit different when every game's the primetime game because it's the only one being played at the time. And you just go through the games, especially this one. Star players everywhere. So it's like Amari Cooper versus Jimmy Ward and Tart are coming over to try to tackle him, right? Or Fred Warner's chasing him, or Nick Bosa's chasing Dak, or Micah Parsons chasing Kittle in the flat, and Trayvon Diggs and Van Der Esch are flying trying to catch Debo. Like just all these names you know about, right? Nick Bosa over Lyle Collins or whoever they have star offensive linemen. Can Eric Armstead push back Zach Martin? These are the type things. McCarthy, I guess it wouldn't be McCarthy. Kellen Moore versus D'Amico. Kyle versus Dan Quinn. Like all these things are constantly talked about as we're on pins and needles and it's 14-14 with 7 minutes left in the third quarter, right? I mean, it's just what makes football awesome.